The day my mother found out she was dying, she asked me to go out and buy her these clear glass marbles. Dad and I hadn't even known she was ill, which was nothing new. Whenever you asked my mother if she was ill, she would throw things at you. Sesame buns, editorial page, a handful of hair ribbons. Do not, she would say, suggest things to suggestible people. Anyway, I brought her the marbles and she counted 90 of them out and put them in this old cut glass bowl, which had been the sum total of Great Aunt Helena's estate. Apparently, the doctors had given her 3 months, and she set great store by doctors. She said she always believed them because they were the nearest thing to the Old Testament we had. I wouldn't give you 2 bits for these young smiley guys, she'd say. I go for a good, stern, furrowed physician. She wouldn't even have her teeth cleaned by a dentist under 50. So she counted out 90 clear glass marbles and put them in the bowl on her bedside table. Then she went out and spent $1,200 on nightgowns. She said, "In my family, you are only dying when you take to your bed, and that, my darlings, is where I am going." And she did. Oh, we hashed it around. Ted said she couldn't possibly be dying, but the doctors convinced him. I told her it seemed a little medieval to lie in state up there, but she said she didn't want to be distracted from what she loved, us, and what she wanted to mull. And she said there was nothing outside except drugstores and supermarkets and dry cleaners, and that, given her situation, they were beneath her dignity. I asked her what she intended to do up there, and she said, study French, visit with us, generally mull, and maybe call a few pals. Study French. She said she'd made a pledge to herself years ago that she would die bilingual. Dad and I cried a lot, but she didn't. He was fun to cry with. From then on, the doctors had to come see her because, as she put it, she came in with a house call, she was going out with a house call. And all day, every day, she would hold one of these marbles in her hand. Why? She said it made the day longer. Mother had her own bedroom. That's the way it always was for as long as I can remember. She called my father the Thrasher. Dad could really get into a nightmare. Apparently, early on in the marriage, he had flipped over and broken her nose, and that was it. Separate beds. Her room was very spare, really. Wooden floors, old steel and brass bed, oak dresser, bedside table, and don't ask me why, a hat rack. No pictures on the walls. She never understood how people could stand to look at the same darn thing day after day. She said it was bound to deflate the imagination. We'd sit with her after dinner and talk about issues. She told us she was too far gone for gossip or what we ate for lunch. Then we'd all turn in, and in a little while, just before I drift off, I'd hear this. Happened every night. After the 3rd or 4th day, I saw one lying on the floor and started to pick it up, but she said, "Leave it." She said it very sharply. I asked, "How come?" And she said she was learning to let go of them. Oh, she passed the time. There were things she wanted. She made a list of children's books from her own childhood, and we got as many of them as we could find from the library. She said they were still the only good books she'd ever read. She wrote notes to, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 people, and they told us later on that they were sort of little formal goodbyes, each of them recalling some incident or shared something not very significant, but the odd thing was that in each one, she included a recipe. A recipe in every one of them. We got out the big cookie tin full of snapshots that somehow never became a scrapbook. She liked that. She showed my father how to do the medical insurance and how she handled the accounts. We went through her jewelry. She wrote down the names of the roofers and the plumbers and the air conditioning people. She called it wrapping up. Well, this is good, she'd say. I'm wrapping it up. She had the television moved up in her room, and she called me aside to say that it was entirely possible that she might reach a stage where she really wouldn't know what she was watching, but that I must promise her that I'd keep it on PBS. Later on, when it started getting hard, she told Dad and me that she wanted to spend more time alone. I'm afraid, she said, that I'm going to have to do this more or less by myself. She said that she was glad. She hoped that this was arranged so that you got less attached to the people you loved at the end. The next period isn't worth going into. It was just hard. Do you know that from the very beginning down to the very end, she never admitted to any pain? Never. She called it the chills. The last thing she asked for was a picture we had in the front entrance hall of a Labrador Retriever she and Dad had owned when they were first married. He was, she said, a perfectly dreadful dog. When you are young, she said, you believe in the perfectibility of dogs. I was in bed 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, towards dawn. Then this. Dad and I ran in there. Bedside table was turned over and she was gone. Dead. When the emergency medical people got there, they found this. The rest had spilled when the table fell, but this one was still in her hand. I keep it. I keep it in my hand all day. It makes the day longer.